February 7th, 2024. The Walt Disney Company announces an eyebrow-raising $1.5 billion investment in video game developer and publisher Epic Games that, once approved by regulators, will give Disney a 9% stake in the company. The goal of this investment? To create an expansive and open games and entertainment universe connected to Fortnite. Now, the shrewd among you may notice that nowhere in this press release by Disney is the term Metaverse used, even though this sounds quite a bit like they're trying to build a Metaverse. And while Bob Iger and Disney may not be too keen on using the term, the same doesn't go for the CEO of Epic Games, Tim Sweeney, one of the biggest and highest profile proponents of the Metaverse, probably second to Zuckerberg over at Meta. Even though at first glance, this marriage between the most powerful entertainment company in the world and the developer of one of the largest online games ever makes sense, some of it, well, doesn't. Specifically, Disney's track record in the interactive space has been spotty, to say the least. But given some of Bob Iger's statements about this deal with Epic, Disney seems like it's making a complete about-face with how it treats gaming. To quote Iger, "And when I saw Gen Z and Gen Alpha and even millennials, and I saw the amount of time they were spending in terms of their total media screen time on video games, it was stunning to me, equal to what they spend on TV and movies." And the conclusion I reached was, we have to be there. We have to be there, huh? That's a very odd statement from a company who laid off its entire Metaverse division last year, shuttered Disney Interactive Studios back in 2016, and back in 2013, after its acquisition of Lucasfilm, promptly shut down beloved game developer LucasArts, handing the keys to the Star Wars IP over to Electronic Arts in a decade-long exclusive deal. And if you'll indulge me for a second, I want to zero in on Star Wars games in particular, because this is where Disney's indifference to video games becomes extremely palpable. During EA's reign over Star Wars games, EA released a handful of mobile games and 5 AAA titles. And while some of these games were received well, like Jedi Fallen Order, most of these games were plagued by controversy. Lack of content, optimization issues, and, perhaps most egregiously, the controversy behind loot boxes and microtransactions in Battlefront 2, which famously resulted in the most downvoted Reddit comment in the site's history, and even a high-profile investigation by Belgian regulators. By all accounts, EA kinda flubbed managing the Star Wars IP. But even now that their 10-year deal has expired, Disney is still licensing the Star Wars IP to EA. It sounds like the only time they were ever really reprimanded by Disney was in the wake of the initial Battlefront 2 controversies. And even that was only because they didn't want the controversy to impact the ticket sales of The Last Jedi. They could not care less about the game itself. And again, please indulge me, but the story behind Battlefront 2 in particular really fascinates me. To EA's credit, they ended up removing microtransactions from the game and delivered on its promises for multiple free content updates the years after its release. But all of this came to an end in February 2020, with Battlefront 2's final major content update right after the release of The Rise of Skywalker. EA and DICE shifted their focus towards future titles like Battlefield 2042. And despite the massive success of The Mandalorian and the release of a deluge of other Star Wars TV shows since, Battlefront 2 sat collecting dust. You'd think that continual support of a Star Wars-themed multiplayer arcade shooter would be a no-brainer to capitalize off of these other shows, right? To cross-promote, to have a place to go online and play Star Wars? EA regained a fair bit of goodwill from the Battlefront 2 community as it released content updates, and all of that just went to waste, all because Battlefront 2 had a predetermined lifespan. After the sequel trilogy was all wrapped up, EA wanted nothing to do with the game anymore. But more importantly, Disney didn't even care, and the evolution of their licensing model reflects this complete apathy. Studios can essentially do whatever they want with the Star Wars IP within reason, so long as it makes money for a couple years. I mean, come on, the re-release of the original Star Wars Battlefronts should have been a slam dunk, and even that got botched. And yes, while Disney brought the LucasArts brand back in 2021, they're still not developing anything in-house. It's just a rubber stamp to slap on top of licensed games to make them seem more credible. Really, Disney's licensing business model reflects a desire for the company to reap all the benefits of video games, things like presence in the cultural zeitgeist, cross-promotion with its movies and TV shows, and, well, additional revenue, without having to do any of the real work or long-term planning that are necessary for truly great gaming experiences. And that's what makes Epic Games so appealing to Disney. Fortnite is a seemingly evergreen platform, a central hub for all things current, and most importantly for Disney, a near frictionless place to funnel their IP into. But it's not just what Epic Games is that attracts Disney, but what it will be. After all, a $1.5 billion investment is no small chunk of change. And although Disney themselves are loath to use the term metaverse, that's exactly what Epic is selling them and selling us. So, what is Epic Games' vision for the metaverse? If you spend any amount of time online, you'll know just how much talk there's been these last few years about building the metaverse. While the idea of it has fallen a little out of vogue lately, it still has its stalwart supporters, like Epic's Tim Sweeney. But one of the few constants in discussions surrounding the metaverse is that, well, no one seems to know what the hell it is. Some think it involves AR and VR, like Facebook. Others think blockchain technology or cryptocurrency have to be involved, a la Decentraland. Also, side note, if you haven't already, do yourself a favor and just go watch the Folding Ideas video on Decentraland. You'll thank me later. But to my surprise, after looking into it a bit more, Tim Sweeney's vision for the metaverse is unconcerned with these technologies, sometimes even outright rejecting them. And in fact, he believes that millions of people are already living in a sort of proto-metaverse in Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, etc. Looking at this presentation back at Epic's GDC 2023, they identify three core components of the metaverse: social interaction in a shared, real-time 3D simulation, an open economy with rules but decentralized control, and a creation platform open to all programmers, artists, and designers. And would you look at that, the first box is already checked. All that's left is building out this decentralized creator economy, decentralized being the key word here. Just as there are common standards in place for navigating and interacting with the web as it exists now, things like HTML, JavaScript, CSS, HTTP, etc., Sweeney believes that a new layer of open standards need to be created for the metaverse to truly take shape, extending into things like more advanced networking and 3D modeling. Or, in other words, it's not a storefront with separately compiled apps. Everyone's code and content must interoperate dynamically while updated in a live environment. And though Sweeney admits that this will be a long and evolutionary process with many standards potentially competing, Epic has been hard at work trying to forge this new vision for the web. The Unreal team has been firing on all cylinders, making improvements to the Unreal Engine. Last year, they unveiled the Unreal Editor for Fortnite and started promoting community-made islands and maps in the Discover tab far more aggressively. They've given out countless Epic Games mega grants over the last few years to fund the development of games and other projects built on the Unreal Engine, including projects built using the Unreal Editor for Fortnite Creative Islands. They've also been building their own programming language, Verse, which they very blatantly want to see become the open standard programming language for building experiences in the metaverse. And later this year, Epic's collection of digital asset stores will be merged into one all-encompassing marketplace, Fab. It's textbook vertical integration. And though they have some competition in the form of other game engines, other asset marketplaces, and other programming languages, Epic wants to be the one-stop shop for all of these things. I know you're probably wondering, just as I was when I was researching this video, what is the point of all this work? I mean, yeah, to achieve the metaverse or whatever, but for an end user, what is there to offer? What the hell does interoperability tangibly give us? And the only answer I could really find to this question is this. Users will be able to obtain cosmetics for their virtual avatars and be able to wear them between different games or virtual worlds or whatever we're going to call them. So theoretically, I could buy a cool hat in Roblox and be able to wear it in Fortnite or Minecraft or whatever other virtual worlds pop up in the future. That's it. That's the only answer Tim Sweeney provides in his interviews. And so I thought, that really can't be it, can it? And so I dug deeper and I came across the Metaverse Standards Forum, the consortium tasked with coordinating the development of many of these open standards, which also has the backing of nearly all of the tech industry's major players, including Epic Games. And in one of their own videos explaining their vision for the metaverse, they provide the exact same answer. Except, as I was watching the video, something they said caught my attention.
It is open standards that hold the promise of services and experiences interoperating through sharing data to enable the metaverse to scale in functionality and scope far beyond any single experience, creating a network effect to build a significant social and economic opportunity for all. One of the first interoperability opportunities is to be able to use your avatar and any digital goods you have purchased across multiple worlds in the metaverse. Defining this kind of interoperability, though, is a multi-layered challenge. As just in the real world you are not permitted to take any object anywhere in the world, we will need Metaverse standards to enable border customs between worlds to ensure IP ownership, business models, age appropriateness, gameplay, and rendering styles are respected. To take a gaming example, it wouldn't be fair to enable a laser rifle purchased in a space simulator to be taken into a medieval battle recreation.
And at this point, I really couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tim Sweeney and his ilk want to completely reshape how virtual experiences are built on the web, and in fact, completely rebuild already extant games and virtual worlds to abide by these new standards. Also that your virtual items and cosmetics are always with you, except not always, because there are border customs that will filter out what items you are and aren't allowed to use in certain worlds because of IP licensing, or whatever potentially arbitrary requirements the stewards of these worlds decide on implementing. And I guess the player will just have to keep track of all of that themselves? Just, what's the point of making these in-game items theoretically platform agnostic if there are still going to be these sorts of restrictions put up? And does this not flatten the gaming experience? Will asset creators have to make virtual items in a myriad different aesthetic styles so that they can fit into whatever game you're playing, like in LEGO Fortnite? Will some of these virtual items not lose their meaning by divorcing them from the games that they're from? And aren't there privacy concerns here too? Even though it is annoying to keep track of the litany of usernames and passwords for all the various gaming accounts one might have, is it really all that better to merge them all under one digital identity? Is this patchwork system really the future? Well, Tim Sweeney thinks so. He even believes that this model for the metaverse will unlock a quote, multi-trillion-dollar economy around digital goods in the future. In disbelief, I read over Sweeney's interviews again. And in one interview with the Washington Post, I think he let the mask slip a little bit. Instead of defining the metaverse through the lens of interoperability or the creator economy or whatever, the Washington Post characterized his vision of the metaverse very differently. The simplest way to define the metaverse is as an evolution of how users interact with brands, intellectual properties, and each other on the internet. The metaverse, to Sweeney, would be an expansive, digitized communal space where users can mingle freely with brands and one another in ways that permit self-expression and spark joy. Or to use his own words, I think the real force that's going to shape the metaverse into an open platform is the power of all the brands to participate in it. So yeah, it's all about the brands. Woohoo! How could I have been so naive? Recently, I watched a video by, fellow internet thought haver and Dan Olson enjoyer Rosenkreutz on how monetization will ruin the internet again. And there are many great stories and observations they make in their video, going beyond the hackneyed platitudes we hear all the time about social media platforms. I implore you to go watch it yourself. But there were two ideas in particular that stood out to me. Number one, that digital spaces are not a commons, despite our inclinations to frame them that way. And number two, that creators are useful to internet companies insofar as they create ad space. Two observations that may seem obvious, but seeing them spelt out really helped me understand what the future holds for the internet and for Epic Games. Epic wants to manifest an entirely new digital social landscape. And to actualize this vision, Epic is making these unfathomable investments in new tools and in creators themselves in hopes that their player base becomes comfortable traversing these new online spaces. And in an ideal world for Epic, maybe things will even get to the point where they can take their hands off the steering wheel and let these digital worlds become more or less self-directed. But the purpose of these travails on the part of Epic and its army of creators is to, at its core, build more ad space. To put it another way, stealing again some verbiage from Rosenkreutz, content creation becomes production. And although Epic claims it doesn't want to be the middleman between brands and creators and players, being the owner of these new open standards of the metaverse would undoubtedly give them immense amounts of power in shaping this digital world. Once they foster a sufficient amount of dependence, there are ample ways they can dredge actual returns on their investment. I mean, just look at what Unity tried to pull. Also, even if we take Epic at their word about not wanting to be an intermediary, then what the hell is this deal with Disney all about? Or this deal with Sony and the LEGO Group? But again, I'm really skeptical as to whether Epic's vision for the metaverse will become anything beyond what Fortnite is now. Tim Sweeney tends to frame the metaverse as a liberating ecosystem for players and creators alike, but it really only sounds like they'll be free to purchase more digital items and to be advertised to. Maybe it's just not clicking for me, but is the metaverse really that much of an improvement over games like Roblox, Minecraft, VR chat, or Gary's Mod, coupled with digital marketplaces like Steam. Not to mention, I really don't think the metaverse will suddenly usher in a golden age of gaming experiences facilitated by brands. Like I mentioned earlier with Disney, most brands care surprisingly little about their IP when it comes to video games outside of their revenue potential. And this is sure to extend to the metaverse as well. And so this creates a kind of awkward situation where no one entity really is taking responsibility for the quality of branded experiences in the metaverse. And we can see this already happening in Fortnite. Up until this point, with few exceptions, branded events in Fortnite have consistently been about drumming conversation about the events rather than the events themselves. Brands rarely have a compelling vision for what they want the branded experience in Fortnite to be like. After all, marketing teams aren't game designers, and so these events are really just a way for brands to get some easy press, painting themselves as innovative and forward-thinking, whereas the experience itself is usually just a collectathon or a parkour map. And there's a reason why these events are never permanent. They're made to be surface level, ephemeral, disposable, easy to forget, so that you can seamlessly move on to the next thing. So is the juice really worth this very, very hefty squeeze? Building these new tools and open standards, courting other brands and game companies to join in, convincing creators and players to spend untold hours of their life producing and consuming in this new ecosystem, all for interoperable digital items? Is it worth it, as they put it, doing unprecedented open heart surgery of Fortnite's backend to cram these new technologies in? And there's another big cost I've neglected to talk about thus far: people's livelihoods. In a letter to the company released earlier this year, Sweeney specifically cited the costs associated with building his metaverse as one of the reasons why Epic laid off 16% of its workforce, over 800 people. It's really not about making games anymore. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Epic Games dropped games from its company name sometime in the next couple years as part of some metaverse rebrand. And now also, after the departures of two key Epic executives, Donald Mustard, the former chief creative officer at Epic, and Sergey Galyankin, the former head of publishing strategy, it really seems like Sweeney's the only one at the wheel, eager to make big sacrifices in the short term in service to his future metaverse. Really, at the end of the day, Tim Sweeney's vision for the metaverse really isn't much better than the crypto bros, no matter how much he tries to distance himself from them. In a nutshell, Tim Sweeney's metaverse is an unimaginably vast expanse filled with equally unimaginative experiences built off of unimaginably costly infrastructure, all to build a place where every interaction is an opportunity to make money for someone else. Or, as Wes Fenlon puts it in PC Gamer, it's a commercial dream, not a creative one. And I have a feeling that it's just a matter of time before it all blows up in Epic's face. Maybe brands will finally come to their senses. Maybe players will reject Epic's path towards mass commercialization. Or maybe Epic will run out of money after milking its cash cow dry. Whichever way things play out though, I think it's fair to say that this metaverse is doomed to fail. I've been 1C2, thanks for watching. I have a Patreon if you want to give me money, and here's some other videos, and yeah, thank you. Bye.